Title: Night of the White Snow. Who needs a nuclear weapon? After days of waiting for the perfect weather conditions, the ideal time finally came on March 9, 1945. 300 B-29 Superfortress bombers took off from American air bases across the Mariana Islands, carrying over 500,000 napalm and petroleum jelly cylinders to be dropped on the heart of Tokyo. For the last 5 months, the 20th Air Force had been using American B-29 bombers to carry out precision strikes on several military targets in Japan, but the results were deemed fruitless. Eager to force Japan into surrendering, the United States decided to switch from precision strikes to area strikes in hopes they would be as successful as in Hamburg and Dresden. During that fateful day, the massive formation of American bombers unleashed a firestorm over Tokyo as the world had never seen before or since. The night of the black snow would make the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki pale in comparison, becoming the single most destructive bombing raid in history. Right after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, the American military wanted nothing more than to strike back at the heart of Japan. Unfortunately, its naval power had been seriously crippled by the surprise assault, and its remaining forces couldn't conduct a sustainable incursion into the empire's main island. Aircraft availability was also a significant limitation, as the United States had no bomber capable of reaching the Japanese archipelago from its central Pacific bases. Still, the need to show the world that Japan was not invulnerable to the American military led the United States to conduct a highly ineffective raid on Tokyo in 1942. Commanded by Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle, 16 B-25B Mitchell medium bombers took off from the American Navy aircraft carrier USS Hornet, positioned off the coast of Japan. The attack was a huge morale boost for the weary American sailors and Marines. However, it proved to be a massive waste of resources, failing to inflict any significant damage to the Japanese military. With few options left, American forces in the Pacific were forced to island hop for years in hopes of one day getting close enough to finally launch a large air raid on the Japanese main island. Eventually, 2 pivotal events shed light on the possibility of carrying out this feat. The first milestone was the deployment of the mighty B-29 Superfortress long-range bomber, with an astonishing 5,592-mile range that towered over the B-25B's 1,300-mile reach. Even if the formidable range of the B-29 was not enough to reach Japan, the American forces had a second significant advantage: the colossal success of their island-hopping campaign in the South Pacific. Despite the Japanese forces' fierce resistance, the American troops continued to push back the enemy, drawing closer to Japan with every landing. Soon, the American High Command realized that if they could capture the Mariana Islands and set up an airbase in the region, Tokyo would fall well within the range of the Superfortress raiding capabilities. It would take several months, but after some of the most dramatic fighting in the Pacific theater, the United States finally seized the islands, allowing the first B-29 to arrive on site by October 12, 1944. In November of 1944, the United States began launching air raids from the islands of Saipan and Tinian. General Haywood S. Hansell oversaw the assaults as leader of the 21st Bomber Command. By this time, American leadership was becoming increasingly frustrated with Japan's reluctance to negotiate or surrender. American forces had consistently achieved one victory after another against Japan, and they showed no sign of decreasing morale or willingness to concede. If the empire continued to fight to the last man, as their propaganda indicated, the cost to American lives would be unmeasurable. The United States needed to force Japan to concede as soon as possible. The first of Hansell's raids began on November 24th with an attack on an engine factory on the city's outskirts. Still, the results were insignificant in comparison to the considerable number of resources needed to deploy such an assault. Several precision strike raids would be carried out over Tokyo and other Japanese cities. Still, lousy weather and B-29 malfunctions rendered every single sortie a failure. On average, there were only 7 days of clear skies each month, and intense gusts of wind made it challenging to aim bombs from high altitudes. General Henry H. Arnold, the commander of the 20th Air Force, was livid with the lackluster results and immediately relieved Hansel of his post, giving authority over the 21st Bomber Command to Major General Curtis LeMay. The general immediately began considering the possibility of switching from a precision strike to an area strike doctrine, but it was a controversial deviation from American traditional military tactics. Even years before the war, the United States Army Air Force's doctrine prioritized precision bombing of key industrial facilities over area bombing of cities. On the other hand, Britain was more familiar with area strike tactics, as it had successfully scorched cities such as Hamburg and Dresden into submission by causing massive firestorms. After learning that bombing trials conducted on the Japanese village set piece, located at the Dugway Proving Grounds in the United States, had proved the effectiveness of incendiary bombs against wood and paper structures, LeMay made up his mind and shifted to area strike raids over Japan. Japan's city layout was unique, as most industrial facilities were not placed in independent city sectors, but were integrated into residential areas. The belief was that if a firestorm was created in the large residential areas of Tokyo, the flames would destroy the military-industrial zones as well. The American strategists estimated that incendiary bomb attacks on Japan's 6 largest towns could cause physical damage to almost 40% of the nation's industrial facilities and result in the loss of 7.6 million man-months of labor, a monumental blow to Japan's already weakened war efforts. A series of trials were conducted to best configure the incendiary payloads. The results demonstrated that M69 incendiaries were especially effective at starting uncontrollable fires. Massive stocks of incendiary bombs were then built in the Mariana Islands to prepare for the attack, and each B-29 bomber was modified to carry 4 tons of explosive material. Several initial raids were conducted to test the effectiveness of firebombing against Japanese cities. The tests had mixed results, with some resulting in significant fires, and others having little impact. One such raid happened over Nagoya, but the Japanese firefighters managed to put the fire out without too much trouble, leading the authorities to underestimate the threat of American incendiary attacks. LeMay determined that the incendiary bombs had been dropped from too high an altitude, and hitting at lower levels would improve precision and enable the B-29s to carry more bombs. American Air Force intelligence had also concluded that the Japanese had only 2 night fighter units, which were believed to pose little threat. As a result, LeMay made the risky decision to remove all of the B-29's guns to decrease the weight of the aircraft and further increase the amount of ordnance they could deliver. The general was confident that the Japanese would not be expecting a low-altitude attack, and despite his subordinates' suggestions that the plan would lead to unprecedented civilian casualties, LeMay gave the order to attack. On March 8th, LeMay issued orders for a major firebombing attack on Tokyo the following night, which would target a quadrangular area on the city's northeastern side. These wards formed part of the Shitamachi district of Tokyo, mainly populated by working-class people. The directive given to the B-29 crews was that the primary purpose of the attack was to destroy the many factories within the target area, but also cause significant civilian casualties as a means of disrupting production at major industrial facilities. LeMay wanted to personally lead the attack, but he was prohibited from doing so as he had recently been briefed on the existence of the atomic bombs, and his capture was a risk the United States could not take. Thus, the strike was led by the 314th Bombardment Wing's commanding officer, Brigadier General Thomas S. Power. The loaded bombers began taking off after 5 o'clock in the evening, and it took almost 3 hours for the 300 B-29 to make it off the airbase. The first strike warplane arrived over Tokyo shortly before midnight on March 9th. As the aircraft entered Japanese airspace, they were continually spotted by Japanese lookouts. Still, they were disregarded as part of a flight drill. By the time the Japanese authorities confirmed the attack, the bombers were already over Tokyo. The American warplanes began unleashing their incendiary payloads at 12:08 in the morning, with the first bombers drawing an X pattern on the target location so other bombers could fill the spaces left until a rectangle of fire was achieved. The weather was clear, except for the strong winds that quickly carried the flames from one wooden building to the next. The city's anti-air systems provided some protection at first, destroying over a dozen bombers. But, as the fires spread, the crews of the anti-aircraft guns had to run for their lives. Extensive fires rapidly expanded across northeastern Tokyo. In less than 30 minutes, fires combined into a massive firestorm beyond the fire department's control, and the Japanese authorities stopped trying to fight the fire and concentrated on evacuating civilians. The blazes grew at unfathomable speeds, engulfing thousands of people as they attempted to flee. 1 hour after the strikes, the whole eastern part of Tokyo was destroyed. The skies were soon covered in a thick layer of dark smoke, and the American bombers still dropping their payloads had poor visibility. Many ended up striking areas outside the target zone, leading to more fires and destruction. Black smoke also blinded evacuees in the streets, which resulted in panic and massive stampedes. And as the firestorm swallowed the city, temperatures reached 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. The fire eventually burned itself out by mid-morning on March 10th, stopping just as it reached large open areas or the Nakagawa Canal. Over 100,000 people lost their lives in the attack, with 1 million injured and another million left homeless. Many survivors took shelter in the wealthy part of Tokyo, where massive riots ensued. Both Japanese and American press reports downplayed the civilian casualties caused by the event, with the United States focusing their message on the destroyed infrastructure and the Japanese counterparts, highlighting the B-29s that were shot down. Despite the catastrophic consequences and the number of civilian casualties, the attack was not given much afterthought by the American leaders. Instead, it was considered a necessary action to bring the war to an end without putting additional American lives at risk. Still, the Japanese government would not concede, but it was forced to redirect the few aircraft squadrons it had left for attacks on American bases to defend Tokyo in case a new strike took place. LeMay considered the bombing a significant success that technically obliterated Japan's ability to defend itself. Nevertheless, Japan would refuse to surrender for 5 additional months until the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki sealed the country's fate. Many activists around the world, especially in Japan, continue to call for the bombing of Tokyo to be considered a war crime and for the United States to officially apologize for the atrocity committed. But to this day, the government has made no efforts to accommodate such petitions. If you enjoyed this content, visit our channel for more stories like this. Please like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow. Also, let us know in the comments where you are watching from.